afternoon, everybody. I was told we have 25 minutes for our panel discussion on sustainability and the green future in railing in Africa. I do also want to provide participants in the audience to ask some questions, so I'll try to keep the actual panel discussion rather short, and hopefully you'll have some intriguing and challenging questions to us. Let me quickly introduce the panel. I'm delighted to have Desmond here, CEO of Transnamib, the national railway operator in Namibia. Then Elmarie from Traction, Traction being an independent rail operating company active across the continent. And Vamshi from Webtec, one of the leading locomotive or traction manufacturers. So I think we have a very good panel, and from a diversity point of view, from a state-owned operator, private operator, and locomotive leader, to give us hopefully a quite comprehensive vision into the future of railing in Africa. My name is Max Matschke. I'm the managing partner at Anura Partners and have the honor of moderating this panel today. So let me start with a question for each one of you. So, what do you believe is the biggest lever for improving sustainability in the rail sector, and what is your organization or company doing to work on it and contribute to it? Desmond, do you want to start?
Yeah, thank you, Max. Good afternoon, everybody. Nice having you here. I think at Transnamib, sweating our assets, our rolling stock, refurbishing aggressively our aging locomotives, but everybody is doing that, so it's really nothing new. But a huge benefit currently happening in Namibia, and I'm jumping the questions here, Max, is this opportunity in green hydrogen. I'll chat a bit more later about it, but as you know, Namibia is currently the front runner with implementation, introduction, together with foreign investors, especially in Europe, Belgium and Germany, to introduce the green hydrogen. And massive advancements have been made, and this is one opportunity that we as national rail operator is embracing. So that is for us one of the opportunities that we see going forward will make a massive difference.
Thank you, Desmond.
Welcome everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to participate. As a private rail operator, Traction is excited about the opportunities that's going to present itself in terms of green technology going forward. But for the time being, while we're waiting for things to sort of settle down and to get an idea of what form or shape the green technology and sustainability will take going forward, we are focusing on refurbishing our aging fleet as well, similar to what Desmond mentioned. We've got a program in place for each of the locomotives in our lease pool, and we're doing similar work for customers that are making use of Traction services, where we refurbish locomotives. So it's very much a circular economy that we get going, of refurbishing, reusing, repurposing, and also to look at how we recycle and be a responsible citizen in the Roseland precinct where we operate from. So I would say the focus is to continue upgrading the locomotives that we've got until such time that there's clarity on the way forward with regards to what shape or form the green energy will take, because there are many different opportunities or options available. So that is what we would be looking at. Included in amongst those are the upgrading of locomotive control systems as well, because that brings efficiencies. That results in better tractive effort, which in turn affects fuel consumption. So that is something that we personally very excited about, and depending on whether we've got time later on, there's a project that we've been involved in that we've embraced some of the old U20C locomotives about a year ago and embarked on a road to upgrade them, well, technically almost rebuilding them, that we can speak about a little bit later on.
Thank you, Elmarie. Vamshi?
Thanks, Max. Good afternoon, everyone. So maybe I'll divide the solutions or we are working on into 3 parts. One, like we are also partnering with the railroads in modernizing the existing locomotives and then bring new life to them, getting into the circular economy and reusing a lot of stuff which is at the end of life, right? The other part we are looking at is solutions where we can improve the availability and the reliability of the existing locomotives. And there are certain solutions which can optimize the operations of the existing locomotives. So we are working again with the railroads and the operators to bring in those kind of solutions. Like we have solution that Tefo just talked in the main plenary about, like a solution called Trip Optimizer, that would, plan your route and do like an automatic cruise control, and you would save up to 10 to 15% fuel just by implementing those kind of solutions. We are also looking at solutions where we can monitor the locomotives, monitor the health, and thereby improve the availability of the existing locomotives. And as you improve the availability, you're putting the locomotives more in service, and that's what you want, right? In terms of new solutions, we are already working on trying to see if we can use alternative fuels, renewable fuels, use biodiesels. That can again impact your overall sustainability. Then also we have worked in North America to use LNG as an alternative. We are working on solutions for a battery, whether it be a full battery solution or a hybrid with diesel and battery. And as Desmond said, we are also working on solutions for hydrogen, whether we can use hydrogen as part of an internal combustion engine so that we can retrofit the existing locomotives, or looking for the future, like using fuel cells. So these are all part of initiatives that we are working on.
Thanks, Vamshi. I'm hearing 2 patterns between the 3 of you. One is the sweating of assets, extending the life of the locomotives, and thinking about how to get the most value out of the existing rolling stock. And then the second topic I'm hearing is alternative fuels. Maybe to jump in roughly, the aspect that I haven't heard yet is transferring freight from road to rail as one of the sustainability drivers. So that is probably not within the organization, but as an ecosystem point of view. I think roughly 70% of the freight in SADC is still on trucks, not on rail. And then rail can reduce the CO2 emissions per ton by 75% roughly. So a big lever is probably to transition freight from road to rail, just from a CO2 point of view. And then we all know trucks and roads are a hazard and can bear some additional risks to the environment, to people. So I think from an environmental point of view, getting freight from road to rail is a big lever in sustainability. And now, if we look at how to increase the sustainability once the freight is on rail, those 2 topics come to mind. The question that I'm sometimes confronted with from a sustainability point of view is electrification better than diesel trains? Most of the locomotives in SADC are diesel operated. South Africa is a bit of an exception, but the CO2 footprint of electric locomotives is worse in South Africa than diesel locomotives, considering that the energy going into them is mostly coal-fired electricity. So electrification doesn't seem to be the solution. So let's look at those alternative fuels. Desmond, you said hydrogen might be the future. Namibia is strategically well located for hydrogen production. You've mentioned the partnerships with Germany and Brussels. How could a future with hydrogen look like in the rail sector?
Yeah, Max, maybe just to go one step back, we have in Namibia a very aggressive road to rail strategy. And one of the mechanisms that will be introduced by our own Ministry of Works and Transport is legislation, regulatory change to currently, fortunate for Namibia, most dangerous goods, if not all, are currently on rail, but there's still, for example, we only transport on rail 12-13% of the total fuel in Namibia. We have allowed that over many years to happen from where the road industry have basically taken over that role. We are taking it back. And fortunately, the fuel majors, the big international companies, rail is also right on top of the agenda. And so we are embarking and growing very well month on month on putting back fuel on rail within Namibia. We don't cross the borders into any other country as yet, but that is hopefully going to change very shortly. With regards to green hydrogen, the investments, as I alluded earlier, they are being made. It is not just a pipe or a pipe dream. It is happening as we speak. Various plants have been set up. Various trials have been done on road as well with green hydrogen. It is not only a potential rail, but I clearly see it not replacing diesel in the next couple of years. For us, unfortunately, in Namibia, electrification is not an option. Vast distances and the investment required. So we will focus in the near future, still on fossil fuel, but making sure with our new procurement and our remanufacturing programs, the consumption and the emission is one of the KPIs that the new suppliers and the current suppliers or the remanufacturers are being measured upon. So while we keep our focus on diesel as the primary source, we are in parallel looking at various options to utilize effectively green hydrogen.
Very interesting. So there is a potential future with alternative fuels, green hydrogen. Vamshi, you mentioned also LNG and other alternative fuels. And you also mentioned hydrogen. So what other fuels do you see as a potential replacement for diesel?
So at this point, yeah, we are working on biodiesel and renewable diesel as the options, and then LNG and hydrogen is what I would say. Those are the fuels that we are looking at. There are potential other fuels that we are exploring, but again, it's a trade-off that you need to do in terms of the maintenance of the locomotives and the life that you're going to get out of it by using the alternate fuels. That's the other part.
Vamshi, considering you restore or revamp existing locomotives and also sell new locomotives, what is the environmentally more sensible choice? Is it to sweat the old assets or to actually replace them with more reliable, less fuel consumption new locomotives?
Definitely, I think when the older locomotives were made, that the technology that was there versus now, this has been significant upgrades. So I would definitely be inclined towards upgrading the technologies, because you are going to get more a better fuel consumption out of them. And if you look at any life cycle cost of any particular asset, even 50 to 60% of your life cycle cost also goes into a fuel, right? So the more you can save on the fuel, it's operationally also economically more better, and then you're also contributing to lower carbon emissions, is what I would say.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you say revamp existing locomotives with new technologies.
Yes.
And that is the optimum for environmental point of view, or also from a cost point of view?
Yes, for both purposes, I would say so, yes.
So Elmarie, you as an operator have to face the question how to most economically operate your trains. And you said you're also trying to sweat the assets. So in which environment and under which circumstances are you looking at sweating the existing assets, properly revamping them with new technologies, or actually acquiring new locomotives?
I think these two drivers, the one is the operating conditions and whether that allows for the introduction of new locomotives, which is very important. And I would say that the other important thing is really to say to what extent are the components and parts still available. The project that I mentioned earlier on, we've come to the realization that even in working closely with the OEM of the locomotive, that there's certain of the parts and components that are just no longer available. So you either need to re-engineer them or you need to make different plans to try and get it. And I think that is sort of the point where you would get to, that you've probably got most of the useful life out of that locomotive to the extent that you've been able to source the parts and components that are available. So I think once that becomes a challenge, that would probably indicate that you at the end of a life cycle to a large extent, and you could probably still carry on maintaining the asset and so on. But if obsolescence become a problem, it definitely affects the way that one look at it. And then, like I said, if the operating conditions are of such a nature that it allows you to introduce new technology, that's obviously a big plus. Using new locomotives on tracks that are properly maintained and so on. If it's not, operating assets that are worth $4 million US dollar a pop on tracks that are not well maintained could result in financial losses. So I think it's really an equation of those two aspects. And then also the availability of capital. I think that is a challenge that we should never forget about. In most of the African countries, including South Africa, not everyone has got access to very deep pockets to be able to buy new locomotives. So we're trying to see, and that's what I like about what Vamshi also said, is using maybe existing locomotives but introducing the new technologies that are available to get you better fuel consumption, which is a huge driver of cost.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Desmond, as a state-owned operator, you probably have to sometimes face a trade-off between economic considerations and environmental considerations. How do you think about those trade-offs?
I think Anne-Marie mentioned also availability of capital, which most of our state-owned enterprises are faced. And it's not a Namibian thing, it's across the SADC and other regions. 80% of my railway fleet is older than 50 years. That is a really scary statistic. So fuel consumption, it's not optimum. But what we are doing now to fix it with the funding that's already been secured, the remanufacturing of our locomotives, and to replace some of the fleet with new locomotives, and then at the same time also remanufacturing. And remanufacturing, I think we all understand, I had to take a while to understand it, but refurbish is basically you recondition. But with remanufacturing, the majority of the parts are replaced with new ones. And that's what we are focusing on. It is more expensive than refurbishing, but these old locomotives, as I've said earlier, 50 years plus, they're coming to a stage where reconditioning is not an option. So it's costing more, but since fuel is one of our biggest cost drivers, that together with the sustainability option is for us very important.
Okay, thanks a lot. So what I'm hearing from all three of you quite unanimously is that remanufacturing is the way to go to utilize the existing assets, but also incorporate new technologies to reduce fuel consumption, and with that also reduce the operating cost of trains. If you In which aspect on sustainability do you require support from outside of your organization? So where, considering where Sara, everybody's here, governments are here, operators are here, freight owners are here, service providers across the board. So if you have one wish to the outside world on sustainability regarding rail that lies beyond your span of control or beyond your level of influence, what wish would that be to the audience?
I think from my point of view, access to technology. I've over the last 3 days, we've been exposed to various interactions, and brilliant new technologies are emerging, and that could solve a lot of problems in our case at TransNamib. So embracing new technology and making them work for us.
New technology, Elmarie?
I would say our suppliers will play a very important role. That would mean local suppliers as well as international suppliers. Without them, the ability to remanufacture or refurbish is just not possible. So, yeah, working together with the suppliers, and we'd agree with Des on the technology. We are looking at the condition monitoring or asset monitoring systems that are available in the market, and it's quite interesting what that allows you to be able to do in terms of predictive maintenance. So all of that helps to plan better, be able to forecast what you're going to require in terms of locomotive maintenance interventions, and through all of that we hopefully one step at a time, but altogether reduce the carbon footprint in terms of the amount of times that a part or component needs to move, especially if you look at cross-border operations.
Okay, very interesting.
Yeah, and I caught on the last part of it, which is what I wanted to talk about, is maybe some kind of a policy framework and thinking about standardization and frameworks in terms of when you're talking about cross-border operation. If Namibia, for example, has an axle load of 17.5 tons per axle, and other country has 22 tons per axle, and if I want to run a train from one way to the other, I cannot do it right now. So maybe some thought has to be put in, like as part of SADC, can we completely increase the axle loads of certain lines to a higher region, so that maybe we can have commonality across the rolling stock. You can run longer trains, longer distances, right? So, and then can there be standards that can be common across the different countries when you are procuring rolling stock or legislating sustainability related initiatives? Those are things which I would wish, like that's one thing that works in Europe, right? So you have the European standards that are common, that they can use all across Europe, and you can have a train going all the way from one end of Europe to the other end of Europe, right? So those are things I would think that are currently, as an OEM, that I would want to have one locomotive that would run all across, but now I end up designing multiple locomotives for multiple countries. But I think that would go a long way, is what I feel.
So cross-border standardization in order to increase efficiency and also reduce the impact on the environment of not having different types of rolling stock. I'm looking at the time now. Are there any questions from the audience? Somebody would like to ask one of the panelists a question, or all of the panelists? If you raise your hand, here I see. Okay, let me give you a mic.
Okay, thank you. My name is Enga Batusi. I'm the Executive Manager for Business Development and Commercialization at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. So my question is for Desmond. You mentioned that in Namibia, electrification is not an option due to the long distances that the trains may need to travel. Do you think there is a role for other renewable energy such as solar or wind that could play a role in terms of balancing the energy sources required, to operate the trains? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that question. The solarification is currently happening as we speak. Major investments and infrastructure has already been erected because we know the Namib Desert, the sun, we've got the Atlantic Ocean. So surely we just need to, and I mentioned earlier about the technologies, how do we tap into that from a rail point of view? Electrification, as in the classic electrification as you have here in South Africa with electric trains, I cannot see that happening in Namibia. Although if the solar options, I think that's still technology. We need proof of concept, and obviously R&D is very important to us. We need to understand what is out there, and luckily we've got international partners that we tap into and understand what are the benefits to rail. But our immediate goal now is to optimize the fossil fuel option, and then also the green hydrogen. We need to understand the cost, the efficiencies, how it operates under local conditions, the performance, etc. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions in the audience?
Thank you. My name is Tefom Kaila from WebTech. So maybe for you, Vamshi, could you touch briefly on the, call it, compromise or balance between fuel efficiency and emissions, fuel emissions? I think that's a concept that perhaps not always well understood in terms of that balance. But in the same vein, between Desmond and Elmarie, if any of you can answer, has fuel emissions or emissions from the diesel locos become an issue or a topic of discussions in your engagements with authorities or financiers? Thank you.
Thanks, Stefo, for the question. So, yes, it's always a trade-off when you want better emissions and then get better fuel consumption also. So where we tend to, it also varies and depends upon the duty cycles and several other aspects of the operations. So what we tend to do as an OEM is to fine-tune or balance the design in such a way that you get the best emissions possible out of the asset that you have while giving the best possible fuel consumption is what we try to achieve. But it's also a trade-off that we always discuss with our customers when it comes to these kind of requirements is what is their KPI. And if there are legislative requirements that are mandating these kind of emissions requirements, then you are left with no choice other than trying to meet those. But even while doing that, we try to hit that sweet spot where we can get the best possible fuel consumption, right? And then, of course, the use of additional technologies, like, I mean, if you have the older technologies like MFI engine versus going to an EUI engine would definitely give you that additional fuel economy anyway, as compared to even if there are emissions, right? So we look at those kind of drivers that we can leverage and improve upon the fuel consumption while still meeting the emissions targets.
Thank you very much. We are nearing the end, or are at the end of our panel. That time flew by. Elmarie, thank you very much. Vamshi, thank you very much. Desmond, thank you very much. All the best. Enjoy the conference. We do have us present, as it has become tradition here at Sara, only for the ladies. So thank you very much for participating, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you. Thanks.